Good evening, I'm Andy Hodges. Welcome to ZFM Stereo Premier Business Show, Business Unusual, a show where we discuss everything to do with business, finance and economics. Now, our government's been talking about Zimbabwe is open for business, and they've been following up with that by signing deals all around the world. I believe the last number was $12 billion of at least intended investment in the country. However, my guest today, actually, they started looking at Zimbabwe being open for business back in 2016, and in fact, I think that they are now benefiting from that. And my guest is from Varun Beverages Limited. And I think in Zimbabwe we know them as Pepsi. And he is the Corporate Affairs General Manager, Fungai Murahwa. Fungai, welcome to Business Unusual.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, please, listeners, feel free to get in touch with us via WhatsApp on our number 0733-168-045 or our various social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. Now, Fungai, let's talk about who Varun Beverages actually is. Now, they are the second largest franchisee in the world and operates as a franchisee of carbonated drinks and non-carbonated beverage sold under the trademarks owned by Pepsi in India and internationally. Maybe you could just give us a bit of background on Varun.
Okay. Before I start, Andy, I would like to pass a comment on the great facility that you've got here. Amazing. You guys have done a great job. I've always been walking past, but I've never been in here. What I'm seeing here is awesome.
Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Now, coming back to Varun, what exactly would you like to know?
Well, let's look at them. At the moment, they are operating mostly in India. Most of their business is in India. But they have obviously got operations in different countries, particularly in Africa. I think Africa has been one of their thrusts. Mm-hmm. So, maybe fill us in on that. Where do they operate? What kind of products are they selling and so forth?
Okay, Zimbabwe is the last born in the Varun family in Africa. We have only just started production. But we've been in Zimbabwe for the past 6-7 years now, importing from Zambia. So Zambia is our sister company. We have relied on them, a great deal. We've also been importing from Mozambique. But apart from the two countries that we've been importing from, we also have some interests in Morocco. We have interests further up north. That's it. And right. We are a diversified group. We not just into Pepsi production. We into dairy. We into hospitals. Like in Kenya, we have recently set up a hospital that is partnering with our major hospital in India called Medanta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the owner, Ravi Jaipuria, who is ranked 50th richest billionaire in India, is worth an estimated $1.67 billion by Forbes magazine.
1.6 billion, that's correct, sir.
Yeah, $1.6 billion. He's his portfolio of his company runs into fast food chains, Pizza Huts, KFC, and so forth. And as you said, real estate. He also does Costa Coffee, and he's also looking at dairy. But I suppose initially now in Zimbabwe, you're probably looking at the Miranda flavors, the Pepsi Lights, Aqua Clear, and so forth, and then you get into the different phases and so forth.
That's true, yes.
Okay, brilliant. Now let's talk about Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe investment climate is conducive for business right now. In 2016, I suppose you had a bit of hiccups setting up your plant. Could you maybe highlight what sort of hiccups that you experienced when you first started, sort of in 2016, looking at opening up a plant here?
Look, if you were ever to dream of being on Mount Everest, you'd get more satisfaction if you have to climb up on your own. Right. Without having to be flown up there, and then suddenly you find yourself bang, you're on top of Mount Everest. So the challenges that we faced are okay for us. That's what business is all about. You don't get into business and expect that everything is given to you on a silver platter. You have to expect to meet challenges and find solutions to those challenges. That's exactly what we did. We met up with a lot of challenges, a few delays here and there. But tell you what, that gave us the muscle that we now have. We've understood the terrain that we are operating in much better than we probably would have if we had not faced those challenges. So we were shaped into the kind of formidable force that we are through the challenges that we faced.
I mean, we may be talking about Varun and Pepsi, but in essence, that is what the challenge is that any business coming to invest in the country is. They need to know the local terrain, need to understand the market, they need to understand the regulatory environment and so forth. So that gave you the opportunity to learn that, in fact, and to put in place the right strategies towards that. Okay, but I mean, your Africa director and chief executive, Mr. Krishnan Shankar, he used Zambia and what you've done in Zambia as a sort of what they can do in Zimbabwe. I mean, he said we saw opportunities in the future and not in the current situation. The results of our Zambian investments are in front for all to see how it has become one of our flagship plants of Africa. I mean, you had Zambia, which had 13 million cases per annum. Okay, and I believe that grew over 5 to 6 years, maybe double or if not more than that. Yeah. So is there a connect between the Zambian operation and how the Zambian economy grew in terms of investment, particularly in your area and Zimbabwe?
Firstly, we're privileged to have a leader like Mr. Shankar. He's a visionary. He's that giant on his shoulder. We've all stood and were able to see, beyond the current horizons. He has shown us the way, and he keeps giving reference to the experiences he had in Zambia when he started and how the industry then expanded. And it's exactly the same thing that we are now tapping into, and we are in the process of doing as well. You look at how the industry is supposed to be growing. Probably that's the question that everybody is asking. How is the industry expected to be growing in an economy that probably is not as liquid as one would want it to be? But look at it this way. One would go into an outlet. They want to buy a drink. They're used to buying a can for $1. Then suddenly there's a 500 ml that's going for 50 cents. One of two things will happen. Either they will now buy 2 bottles and consume 1 liter, or they will buy 1 bottle for 50 cents and keep that 50 cents for something else, maybe buy a bun, a pie, whatever the case might be. But let's look at the first scenario where they end up buying 2 bottles instead of 1. That's value for money for the consumer. In the process, the consumption levels also go up. And what does that do to the industry? The industry eventually grows, and we're on the verge of starting to see the first fruits of us selling the product at 50 cents.
Right. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about what I call cola wars. I think it's the expression. We'll talk about that.
That's the world over.
The world over, the cola wars.
Oh, yeah.
They've had a lot. But I think what I've noticed as well about Mr. Shankar and what he said was that, Varun seems to look at the opportunity. So even though there may be economic downturns in other areas, there's an opportunity, and I think that applies exactly to Zimbabwe. People would be like, "Oh, well, we don't want to come invest in Zimbabwe for X, Y, and Z reasons." But actually, some companies have the wherewithal to see the opportunity in the growth of the Zimbabwean market, and therefore put their money into it. And I think Varun has done that, particularly in Zambia. Is that right?
Even here in Zimbabwe, look at it this way. I'll give you an example. I hear of a story in which somebody was sent to Africa to go and prospect for business to sell shoes way back. So they came to Africa, saw what they saw, and went back to report. The report was like, look, there's no business in Africa because the people are not used to wearing shoes.
Right.
They walk barefooted. So we can't go and do business in Africa. Nobody will buy shoes. But somebody saw it as an opportunity and said, no, if they are not wearing shoes, this is the time that we should go and make them wear shoes. And
right.
The market is there for people for them to come in and do business. That's exactly what they did, and business started. It's the same thing that we've also done in Zimbabwe. Whilst everybody else is busy saying, Zimbabwe is not good for business, we looked at it and we said, at some point Zimbabwe will be open for business. But I believe now this is exactly what everybody is now singing. The same people who are saying, Zimbabwe is not good for business, are the same ones who are now saying, indeed, Zimbabwe is open for business.
Now they want to get involved in the country and investing in it.
Fortunately for us, it means that we are a step ahead, if not 2 steps ahead of everybody, because imagine if we had started business like now, that's when we would have now started looking for land, starting construction and all. Probably would only have started production after 2-3 years from now.
Right.
But production has already started right now when others are actually like trying to come into the country.
When the confidence is high, the investment climate is high, business is actually positive and knows that the future is bright.
Exactly. A sound business person does not look at the current challenges and say, no, I can't do business here. You look beyond the challenges and you want to understand how long that those challenges are supposed to be prolonging, and what you can do to survive even during those challenging times, and that's exactly what we did.
Right. No, that's exactly it. Yes. Now let's talk about your plant, because I understand that you brought in top of the range equipment. I believe it was from Poland and so forth, and you are opening the plant up in different stages. Maybe you could talk me through. I think plant stage 1 opened, and basically you started production, or the trial runs in February, and now you're pretty much full on now. So please talk us through those phases that you're setting up.
Look, in our organization, we're taught not to blow our own trumpet, but at times I'm forced to do that because, the excitement is overwhelming. The equipment that we have is state of the art. Is the first kind of equipment that you could find in a beverage, company in Africa. Those that have come in can bear testimony to that.
Right. So that's phase 1 was really to set up the Pepsi line and the Mirandas and so forth. Is that how does it work? I know the terminology is a bit different.
Forget about the phases. Let's look at what we have done and what we intend to do.
Okay.
Firstly, we have set up the first building that is accommodating one PET line.
PET stands for?
That's your plastic bottles.
Okay.
One PET line. One line that does your plastic bottles, the actual blow molding, because we don't buy plastic bottles from anybody. We make them ourselves. And then we also have a water line.
Okay, all right. And I understand that you said that construction is still underway, and we're bringing in a can line with a capacity to produce 400 cans per minute.
That's
and
correct.
A husky line for the maximum preform to promote backward integration. Maybe you could explain that, because it's very important in the questions I'll ask you later about this backward integration. I think that's critical.
Let's start with the can line. That's definitely coming, and we're hoping that by the end of winter we'll be up and running. So that's clear. The backward integration aspect that you're talking about, where yes, we're bringing in a husky line. Again, you need to realize that the cost of production in Zimbabwe is always quite high, and every opportunity that you get to reduce costs is very important. One such way of doing it is through backward integration, whereby you now have to look at your supply of raw materials. What can you make on your own and what can you outsource? The more you produce your own raw material, the easier it will be for you in many ways. Forget about the cost. You also want to be able to control everything that's happening within your business. You don't want to suddenly stop production because your supplier does not have empty bottles for you.
Right.
So that's exactly what we...
Okay, I'm with you, because you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, you're coming in, you want to make a product, but you don't want to be beholden to other people or other suppliers in the marketplace to produce your product. So what you've done is you've taken an approach whereby you can try and make as much as you can in-house, for example, with plastic bottles and so forth, so you don't come up with that supply hiccup. Now, I mean, I believe that's an example for other investors, I suppose. Either they can control the supply chain, or do it themselves, or at least have some, the ability for it to actually happen and come to the plants to make the product?
Look, that ability to make it happen can only be done by prophets, maybe. If I may put it that way.
It's hard work, right?
Because it's hard work.
Yeah.
And business, by its nature, is unpredictable. So you then don't want to be at the mess of your suppliers, and you hope and pray that eventually they will give you everything that you need when you want it.
Brilliant.
That's not how it works.
Now I know that Varun is, as you said, into the dairy sector, and I think Ravi Jaipuria, the billionaire who owns Varun, talked about looking at untapped opportunities, and one sector he pointed out, which I thought was very relevant, was the dairy sector, because he says that Zimbabwe is importing a lot of its product or milk from South Africa. So is that like a plan to start sort of diversifying into different areas, particularly milk and so on, that they have done or used the model in India?
Yeah, look, it's quite clear Zimbabwe is dairy deficient, in the sense that we do not have enough milk in the country. If you look at the consumption levels of milk, they're also very low. This is born out of the fact that we don't have that many dairy players in the country. So we've seen it as an opportunity.
Of the dairy herd, I suppose, over the last few years.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's contributed in a very big way.
Right.
So we've seen that as an opportunity that we definitely would want to tap into.
Right.
But look, Zimbabwe is open for business. Almost like every sector has got opportunities, and if such opportunities were to be available at a cost that we believe is good for our business, why not take advantage?
Listeners, we're talking to Fungai Murahwa. He's the Corporate Affairs General Manager of Varun Beverages Limited in Zimbabwe. Of course, they're the makers of Pepsi and Miranda and so forth. So please feel free to get in touch with us, because this conversation isn't just about a specific company. It's about investors coming from India, in this case, the challenges they faced, the opportunities they see in Zimbabwe, and really how they're bringing value to their company and to the nation. So please feel free to get hold of us on our WhatsApp number 0733 168 045, or our various social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. Now, one thing which I was most impressed by, again, Mr. Shankar, the CE of Africa, said he works in Zimbabwe with a dynamic team of locals, because, put us through it. How many local people are you actually employing at the moment? What is your current employment?
We've got a growing team that is now in excess of 200. To be precise, 209 employees as of today. And that number is growing every day. As the business grows, we also have to make sure that we create a team that can handle the business well. Right,
because I think numbers that were floating around were 500 employed directly, and possibly as 3,000 and more expected to be employed in the downstream.
Definitely, by the time that we finish, all the phases that we have to go through, we should be able to easily get to 500.
Right. It's a misconception. Mr. Sanko, he said Zimbabwe has a rich human resource capital, and that helps us to do a lot of business here. We do not have to rely on expat resources to come and set up business, as the local resources are qualified and experienced enough to run the operation. And I think that's critical. There seems to be this impression that we don't have the skill sets or the skills in Zimbabwe to be able to do, for example, what you're doing now at Varun. That's just such a misconception, isn't it?
It's a very bad conception, misconception in the sense that, listen to what Mr. Shankar has said. He has acknowledged that we do have, the necessary skill sets that are required to run the business. That's what, Mr. Shankar saw, and he believed in it. And look, I am one of the people who've been brought in, and we've got other 209 people that have also,
Zimbabweans.
Yeah, Zimbabweans that have started working for us.
And your company, I assume that you must have ongoing training in terms of giving training extra skills for certain jobs and so on and so forth.
Correct. We've mostly taken up youngsters who have just left varsity, and it's important that we start marrying what they learned at varsity to what is actually required in the industry. So for us to be able to do that, we have to make sure that training happens. With us, every day is a training day. There is no better opportunity than making sure that people know what's supposed to be done. On a daily basis, we just have to make sure that people go through one thing or the other.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So now your plant at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, how much are you producing per day currently?
Well, let's look at it from a different angle. Whatever we're producing now is not adequate. Obviously, because whatever we are producing is being taken up into the market. So it's almost like hand to mouth until such a time we have set up the plant and it's now operational without issues here and there. Understand that with a new plant and with a young crop of employees who are being trained on a daily basis, it's not easy for you to get to your optimum production levels. And so let's not even talk about numbers in that sense. Let's talk about what we intend to do. What we intend to do is obviously to bring in the rest of the equipment, train our people, such that we should be in a position to not only produce enough for Zimbabwe, but also be in a position to export.
Right. Oh, yeah. I want to actually get into that export market. But, I mean, if we had to put a number, I understand that right now you're producing 40,000 cases a day. Is that correct?
Yeah, 40,000 cases.
But that is not enough.
That's not enough.
To meet the demand for the product itself.
Yeah, that's not enough, and it's not even our optimum.
All right, brilliant. Let's talk about market share. Now, obviously, you're setting up business. You set up business in a country which has a love for a different type of cola product. Competitor, and Mr. Shanko again, he says Varun wants to target a 30 to 35% market share in 5 to 6 years and then compete for a 50-50 market share in 10 years. Now, I know, of course, you can't tell me your secrets about how you intend to do that, but obviously you must have some strategies in terms of how do you get that market share, because you have to take it, don't you? It won't be given to you.
Of course, nothing is given to you on a silver platter. You have to work for it. Look at it this way. When we came in, we had a lot of challenges that we faced, which we alluded to earlier on. But we managed to go beyond those challenges, and here we are. We're in production, right? And as a result, we are growing. If we were able to do that during that time when things were quite hard, to a point where we are now like fully functional, imagine what we would do in the market in terms of gaining market share. We'll still use that same spirit to fight for the market share until we gain as much as we would want to. But having said that, I still believe that the Zimbabwean market is wide enough for us to have several players who can come in and give value to the Zimbabwean consumer. It's not a market that should be dominated by one force or two forces, but it's a market that should definitely accommodate even 5 more, producers. Yeah, so
I mean, if I had to look at your model that Varun has done in India, where they have sort of come up with a distribution model, because obviously India with 1.6 billion people, they've had to get into what we would call commercial rural areas, and they've done that through distribution. I mean, do you see that sort of similar model? Because obviously you can sell your product in the cities and to supermarkets and so forth, but how do you then move that distribution chain out into the rural areas, into areas, so your brand becomes, sort of nationwide, it's available everywhere, so to speak?
First of all, the good thing is that the product has been accepted by the local consumer. Our people know what's good and what's not good for them. And fortunately for us, they have seen that indeed our products are good for them, and consumption is going up every day.
Okay.
Now, in terms of distribution, we have already set up our distribution throughout the entire country. We've got depots in Bulawayo, Mashingo, Mutare, and the depot network is growing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so basically people come to the depots, buy the product, and then obviously distribute it into the rural areas. That's the idea.
There's that, and then there's also the other aspect whereby we've got our own trucks that go out to distribute to outlets within the locality, and then we also have some smaller distribution partners who are assigned to a particular area.
Okay.
And
so obviously, if people want to distribute like that, they'll obviously contact Varun and so forth, and then you put in place. Okay. Well, before we take a break, let's take a question here. It's from WizTech Z. Thank you, WizTech. It says, it's an interesting one. Do they take interns? And what's the procedural process? I mean, obviously, this is a good employment opportunity for people. So,
Hi, WizTech. Yes, we do. We've got quite a number of intakes that we're currently working with. And as the business grows, we definitely will take more.
Okay, perfect.
What's just required is for one to come to our premises and get the necessary details for them to go through that process.
Right, of course. Yeah. And don't forget, I think it's important that, an opportunity for work is not necessarily also with Varun. You can also look at distribution, or at least getting involved in downstream opportunities, correct? There's jobs to be made downstream.
There are some youngsters we started off with when we were still importing from Zambia. Then they didn't have vehicles with which to do distribution. They would come maybe with a hired, truck, buy product, go and sell, and then come back. But right now we're talking of the same guys now fully fledged, business people. With fleets of vehicles that are now going out in different directions to go and distribute.
I mean, that's exactly what we want to hear, don't we? I mean, Zimbabweans who are proactive, see an opportunity, start small, as you said, you were helping them, but now all of a sudden they are fully fledged businessmen in their own right.
The spirit of not seeing where you're going, but believing that indeed there's some destination that I have to get to. That's what's amazing about most of these young people we have in this country.
Right. Now, you touched on earlier about export. Now, I needed to really try and see how I could get this, because you have a flagship plant in Zambia. Okay, you're also operating a plant in Mozambique and I assume in Morocco as well. And, one area of growth that we always are talking about in Zimbabwe, whether we're open for business or not, is the fact that we need to export more, because export generates more revenue for the country and so on.
That's true.
Apart from your increase in sales, which obviously gives more revenue to government through taxes and so forth. But, are you restricted by where you export to? Because if Zambia is already there, Mozambique's already there, I'm sure South Africa is probably, they're probably making Pepsi at some point. Where do you see export potential as your company?
Yes, you're right. Zambia is already there, and South Africa, Mozambique, we have Pepsi plants there. But you see, what we are planning to be very diversified in terms of the products that we can export when the time to export comes. We were talking of backward integration, where we would now have to manufacture preforms that can now be blown into, your plastic bottles. That's again something that could easily be exported anywhere in Africa.
Or the actual bottles themselves, so to speak.
Yeah, either the bottles, or you see what happens is that first they come in the form of granules, and then from granules you have you manufacture capsule-like, little containers, which can now be blown into a full bottle. So the easiest would be manufacturing that capsule and then sending it out into any market that you would want to send out to. It's easier that way as opposed to exporting a fully blown bottle, because it's just air and it won't give you the value for money.
Right. Look, I want to get back to this export level, but we have to take a break, unfortunately. Please join us after the break. We're talking to the Corporate Affairs General Manager, Fungai Murahwa of Varun Beverages Limited, or Pepsi, I think as we would know them now. So please join us after the break. And please, listeners, Mr. Murawha has an opinion about or the experience of an investor in Zimbabwe, and he has a lot of insight in that. So please WhatsApp us on 0733 168 045. Welcome back to Business Unusual. Before the break, we were talking about export markets, and I really want to just tie you down a bit, Fungai, because, you talked about, the granules and the bottles and so forth that you could possibly export to the various areas. But aren't you still restricted by the fact that you would be competing with your sister plants in Mozambique and Zambia? I mean, where's the potential for you to make export revenue? What countries where you're not going to be stepping on each other's feet?
For us as sister companies, there's nothing like competition, more of synergies than anything else. I was talking of exporting those PET,
Yeah, the granules and the plastic. Yeah.
Now, let's look at the finished product. We have several countries that are yet to, have Pepsi bottling plants. There is Botswana, there is Malawi, there is the DRC. Look, Zimbabwe is open for business, but Africa is open even wider because, look, all those places we need to make sure that we send product.
Okay, so I mean, let's take Botswana or, for example, Namibia and so forth. You mean that people are not already buying your product in those countries, so there's an opportunity to invest? Because obviously they must be, I assume.
Of course, yeah.
So therefore, if you're going to export to those countries, you're taking on somebody else, or you're trying to get market share from someone who's sort of bringing the product in there without getting a franchisee license?
The interesting part is that if you go into Francistown today, you'll be amazed to note that you find empty bottles of Zimbabwean product. So although we've only started production recently, the product has already found its way across the borders. People are coming in to buy, and they go and sell out there.
Okay, but so, I mean, in a way that isn't exporting, is it? I mean, they're coming here to buy.
Yeah, that isn't exporting, but what I'm trying to say is that there already is a market that is gradually growing. So you're talking of going into a market that somebody else is already supplying. That somebody else is actually us.
Right. So in fact, all you're doing is formally going into that market,
yeah, so
rather
now we would have to go out formally and supply.
Okay. So your company does have huge ambitions at least to have a major part, or huge 20-30% of your production that will be exported and generate revenue for the country.
Definitely, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a question, and I'll get to the question because it actually follows exactly what I want to ask you next, and it's something called Cola War. Now, it's known all around the world, and interestingly enough, we've had various Cola wars in different countries. I think America is a great example, between Coke and Pepsi, and Europe as well, and so on. And it's really one thing that always happens in a Cola war is the price. Okay, now you talked about, for example, you're hitting the market at 50 cents, and other brands or other competitors may sell at the same price but less quantity, and so on and so forth. How is that sustainable? Because what you don't want is to come in at that 50 cents and in 3 months, 4 months, it's back up at $1. I mean, how do you see prices going up, or what do you see in terms of your vision for the price or the Cola war that hopefully doesn't happen but probably will?
Look, let's put it this way. We've not started distributing in Zimbabwe this year. We've been distributing through exports from Zambia and Mozambique for the past 5-6 years now. When we came in back then, we were the first to make sure that we had given Zimbabweans an affordable product, value for money. Cane at that time was going for $1, in some places $1.50, even $2 at times. But
this is the product that was coming in from Zambia and so forth.
This is the product that was just being sold all over, whether it's ours or anybody else's. We then realized that, look, we could give value for money to our consumers by giving them an affordable product. Same quality, same quantity. Right. And we reduced our cane to 50 cents. What then happened thereafter is that we never even thought of increasing the price, and our can is still going for 50 cents. And we brought in even more lines that, like you've got your 500 ml also going for 50 cents now. So for now, our focus is not on increasing the price. Our focus is on ensuring that we expand the industry.
But surely the price is still, I would assume, profitable, of course. I mean, you don't sell at a loss, correct?
Look, earlier on we were talking about the backward integration as part of the strategy that would help us to keep the price low. And the more we further integrate, the more profitable we become. So because of that, we are profitable, I want to believe. Right. Yes, as a business would generally and naturally, face challenges. But I think this price for now is sustainable.
I think you're right. That backward integration and making, at least controlling your supply chain, and we've spoken about it, and I'll keep on saying it. I mean, it's critical to keeping prices down and low. Let me tell you a question. Why I delayed this question is because he was Felix was asking exactly the same thing. He said, "I appreciate what these guys are doing. 7-Up is a great substitute to the S drink, and the pricing is perfect. Are you now making 2-liter bottles? Please also introduce 5-liter party bottles. We need them for weekends and holidays." Wow.
Whoa. Kelvin, thank you very much. That's a good, observation.
Felix.
Felix, sorry. 7-Up is fast gaining ground, and it's one of the best lemonade, drinks you could ever have. When I go to any hotel, wherever, I like Malawi Shanti.
Right, okay.
And the good thing is that people are now calling it 7-Up Shandy.
All right.
It's because of that fine extra good taste that you get by using 7-Up instead of other lemonade.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, well, Felix, there you go. I don't know about 2-liter bottles.
2-liter bottles definitely we have. If you haven't seen it out in the outlets, my apologies. It's my responsibility to make sure that it's available.
Okay.
The team and I will make sure that we push to have a 7-Up 2-liter available in all the outlets.
Right.
So
I have not seen a 5-liter. I'm not sure.
5-liter, no.
Yeah. It's a big bottle, isn't it?
It's a big bottle.
Yeah.
Look, I don't think we would have it now.
So let me get this straight. You're saying that, in essence, you're not too concerned about it. Well, I suppose you are as a business, but you're not too concerned about what competitors' prices are. You're more concerned about your price and how you can maintain that price and what's value for money for your consumers.
Correct. Look, if you focus too much on what's in somebody else's hand without focusing on what's in your hand, you might end up losing what's in your hand. So it's important that whilst we always, keep watch of what is happening elsewhere, we need to make sure that our game is tight, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Right.
We have also noticed that, in fact, let me take you some years back. There's a time when I was in the retail industry, we knew that every winter the price of beverages would go up, such that by the end of winter everybody is used to the new price. But what has happened is that with us coming in, reducing our can to 50 cents, we've not heard of beverage price increases.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting one, because this popped into mind, and we spoke about this. I mean, there was this whole conversation about 15 billion, alleged 15 billion in diamonds and so forth, lost in diamonds and so on. And Parliament, of course, is looking into that. So that isn't what I'm commenting about. But I want to know, how much has Zimbabwe lost in incorrect pricing? I mean, we talk 15 billion in diamonds. How, the prices that are not correct. I mean, you spoke earlier about before, when people were importing your product, it was $1.50, $2, etc. And now you're basically selling a higher quantity for 50 cents. I mean, that's a relevant question, isn't it?
It is a very relevant question. In fact, one issue that is very close to our hearts at Varun Beverages.
Right.
When you go into a market to do business, it's very important that you connect with the people well enough to be able to understand their plight. Whilst people are busy talking of the challenges the economy is facing, others would be taking advantage and fleecing the consumer even more by, maybe overpricing. It's not a good business practice. The best practice probably would be trying to see how best you can cut your costs down and be able to give to make the consumer pay for exactly what they're buying, and not for them to be paying for other costs that relate to maybe inefficiencies in production and all.
No, because that's what actually drives up the price. And we'll talk about some of the issues. And I think foreign exchange and the parallel market, if I can call it that, or the tiered market is an issue. We'll talk about that.
Correct.
So please, listeners, feel free to get hold of us with Fungai Murahwa. He's the Corporate Affairs General Manager of Varun Beverages, the producer of Pepsi and Miranda and Aqua Clear Water.
Aqua Clear Water.
Please get hold of us on WhatsApp 0733 168 045 or our various social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. Now, Fungai, you've been quoted. I mean, this is your quote about electricity, for example. The issues that we need to look at that need resolution in terms of business. And I think this is what I'd like to talk about now. You bemoaned the high electricity tariffs in the country and saying they contribute to high production costs of products locally and also affect product prices. Electricity tariffs are quite high in the country, and obviously that has cost problems with most manufacturers. We are not spared because it is a cost that is borne by the company. However, we have plans in the long run to have alternative power for operations. Now, with the conversation that's going on about ZESA looking at electricity price hikes and so forth and tariff increases, which is, I believe, is in discussion at government. One, that means that electricity tariffs will be a bigger burden to you, I suppose, in the future. And also, maybe you could explain about alternative power options that you're looking at.
Look, let's put it this way. First of all, we are not spared from the cost of electricity, and naturally that would definitely increase the cost of production. And because we are so focused on ensuring that our pricing remains what it is now,
right,
it's very important that we find ways of ensuring that we do not incur higher costs in most of these, factors of production that we have. And electricity is one such cost that we always have to keep an eye on. And what I think would definitely have to happen is that we have, solar in abundance in Africa and in Zimbabwe in particular. So if we can be able to tap into that, I know that in some parts of India, for example, where we are headquartered, they've got huge solar farms. And our company is actually considering that. And if we can be able to do that, generate our own power, and then maybe whatever else is left can now be
sold into the grid.
Sold into the grid. Yeah, that would be good for the country.
It will be, because I mean, if companies of your size could do that, obviously it would reduce the dependency on the grid and on the electricity supply, and that would obviously help the country in general as well. Okay, great. Now, one area, in our research, we found out that, like yourselves or your competitors, you require about $2 million. I think one of your competitors said $2 million per month for concentrate. The actual, the input into your.
I wouldn't put an exact figure to that, because obviously.
But you do require the foreign currency, obviously, to bring in certain that you mix into your drinks.
No doubt.
Yeah, and. That obviously is an issue, particularly in this environment of foreign currency shortages, or at least the scarcity of foreign currency, if I can call it that. And I mean, if I look at, for example, your initial budget for your plant was 30 million. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it came in at about 40 million. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? And I think the reason that yourself gave, or your company gave, was due to foreign currency shortages. Right? Could you explain that a little bit? I mean, what does that actually mean? Does it mean that you couldn't find the currency, or you had to? Why would it go up by $10 million?
Initially, I think that was a misquote.
Okay.
There have not been such fluctuations, because look at it. Most of the equipment that we have used, we have imported. So because we've bought from out there, having been funded by our head office in India, I see no reason why we should even consider foreign currency to have been a constraint to us bringing in what we want, to such an extent that the cost would go up.
Okay.
So that's not.
But are you not in the same position as some companies, whereby you can't secure the foreign currency from the central bank or from your allocations, and you have to, I suppose, resort to the parallel or black market to source it? I would assume that is the situation of most businesses.
Look, we're not spared in our plight to have enough foreign currency to pay our foreign suppliers. And our major suppliers for now would be our sister company in Zambia. We have not paid them as much as we would want to, so we are owing them.
But that's
the good
the
thing is that
you talk about.
Yeah, the good thing is that it's within the same company. Therefore, even if we would delay paying them until such a time when eventually we get what we're supposed to be paying, it's okay. But what we cannot do and what we will not do is to go out, onto the parallel market and try and secure foreign currency.
Well, the problem with that, of course, is that it would get. Your quote would be redundant, because you said, I don't think that the company will increase prices anytime soon, as we are doing backward integration in order to manage costs. So if you did go out into the parallel market, this 50 cents would just not be sustainable. You wouldn't be able to.
You can't complain that this fire is too hot, and in the meantime you're also fueling that same fire.
Right.
We cannot complain that the parallel market is affecting the economy, and yet we then go back into that same parallel market and we buy. By simply buying, you are fueling that to carry on, because you're creating a demand. So we would not do that.
Yes, and you're right. I mean, if you go into that market, you're creating a demand, and then when you go back in, the price is higher, and so on. It's a never-ending circle.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep on stressing, and you do as well, about this backward integration, trying to source locally, trying to get local manufacturers involved, because I think that is also part of your business model, is it not? Is to try and what we would say here on the show is buy Zimbabwe.
That's correct.
Okay.
Why would one want to look at sourcing from elsewhere when in fact you can be able to do it on your own?
Right.
Keep your costs low.
Now, one area when we've been talking to companies, which of course is a major concern, is issues such as dividend repatriation out of the country and so forth. I mean, does Varun see this as a problem? Because at some point you'd obviously want to get your value back from your investment, whether it's over years and so forth. But one way of doing that is dividends being repatriated out of the country. And we've known from the past few years that has not been happening for some companies. Does your company see that as a problem, or how do you look at that?
Look at it this way, Andy. We've only just started.
Right.
And for us to even be talking of dividends to a point where we would want to have those dividends repatriated out of the country, I think we would have missed the point in a very big way.
Okay.
We are not in Zimbabwe just to get whatever we can and then get out. We have built something that we have to make sure that is sustained over a very long, period of time. And because of that, we're not even worried about whether we should repatriate any money.
Because this is a long-term investment.
This is a long-term investment that must be sustained by whatever it is that we're making now.
Okay, that sounds good. A quick question. Thank you for bringing Pepsi, which is affordable. So thank you. Do you have an outlet near Guruwe where we can buy as retailers?
Yes, we've got several outlets in Guruwe. We also have a distributor right at the Guruwe Center, so they can go and get from.
Okay, well, there you go. There is an outlet in Guruwe. Now, if you had to look at the current regulatory environment and the investment environment, are there kind of like a few things that you would say, they need to be put in place or improved to make investing in Zimbabwe more attractive for foreign investors? Is there anything that you could point at and say, regulatory-wise, this should happen, or taxes, or whatever? What do you see as the major sort of something that could be tweaked that would make it better?
Look, there's always room for improvement. Anybody who believes that they cannot improve will have again lost the plot. If you want to be in business for a long time, you just have to make sure that you keep looking out for opportunities to improve. And such is the case with Zimbabwe as an investment destination as well. If authorities are really serious about being open for business in Zimbabwe, then definitely opportunities to improve are there, and they must be taken seriously. Let's look at some of the issues that are to do with, for example, when an investor is coming into the country, you are referred to one place, and then from there you go to the other, and so on. The time that it takes for you to regularize whatever business you want to do can be so frustrating with most people that they just decide to leave, because that time which is spent doing administrative work could actually be spent setting up the business and going into production in the shortest possible time.
Right. This is the one-stop shop, I think.
That one-stop shop, and I see that government is now doing that. That's very commendable. Hats off to the authorities for putting that in place. Right. Obviously, the issues to do with when an investor comes, again, the ease of doing business, to the extent that one faces challenges even in securing land on which to set up a business. There are some countries where you go in and within 24 hours you are allocated land to construct.
Yeah, I think Rwanda was a good example. I think
Rwanda is very far. Zambia just it's only about 400 kilometers from here to Lusaka. When we set up in Zambia, you were quoting Mr. Shankar earlier on, when he went to Zambia to look for opportunities to do business. Within 24 hours, he was given a piece of land on which to construct. Here in Harare, we have had to go through a lot for us to get to where we are now.
Right. But you did it, and you kept persevering, and here you are.
Yes, because we realized that the opportunity is there. And in Shona, there's a saying that goes, right. Meaning that, the bees that sting the most are the ones that have got honey. Okay. So the more difficult it was for us in trying to set up and more. The more we actually realized that there were opportunities that we could tap into and be able to have a very long-term, business in Zimbabwe.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up soon. But I have to ask this question because one of my friends, Alois Benjera, he was on the show before talking about sport, and he said, Andy, could you ask, is there going to be an opportunity for maybe Pepsi or your brands to get involved in the sponsorship of sport? And of course, he's a football man, so he was like, are we going to look out for Pepsi branding a Pepsi Cup or something like that?
Well, I'm delighted to say that we've already started in a very small way, though. There are some school tournaments where we are participating big time, from soccer to rugby to various forms of athletics.
Right, because social programs are definitely
social
critical.
programs, yes, we're doing that.
All right.
So, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, there's your answer, Alois. Well, Fungai Murahwa, thank you. The Corporate Affairs General Manager of Varun Beverages, thank you so much for coming on Business Unusual and sharing your experiences of investing in the country.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
And as usual, we end on a quote. And our quote today is from Ravi Jaipuria, the Indian billionaire who's actually behind Varun Beverages. And he said, I think there is huge scope and huge potential in this country, Zimbabwe, which is still untapped. Looking at the potential, I think it's a risk I am willing to take. A few Zimbabwean people we have hired, we have found them to be very smart and hardworking. Something to think about. Good night, and you all be safe.